Hello friends and welcome. We're coming to you today from the United Lodge of Theosophists, 4865A Cordell Avenue, Suite 230, Bethesda, Maryland, 20814. All are welcome to attend our weekly meetings every Sunday at 11 o'clock. Every first and third Sunday we have a roundtable discussion in the afternoon about a particular topic. We are currently studying the Bhagavad Gita and related notes. This being the third Sunday of the month, we will be doing that after this meeting. Today's talk is on a sevenfold universe. Why? Our reading comes from the Bhagavad Gita, starting here in chapter 9, page 63. Unto thee who findeth no fault, I will now make known this most mysterious knowledge, coupled with the realization of it, which having known, thou shalt be delivered from evil. This is the royal knowledge, the royal mystery, the most excellent purifier, clearly comprehensible, not opposed to sacred law, easy to perform, and inexhaustible. These who are unbelievers in this truth, O harasser of thy foes, find me not, but revolving in rebirth return to this world, the mansion of death. All this universe is pervaded by me in my invisible form. All things exist in me, but I do not exist in them. Nor are all things in me. Behold, this is my divine mystery. Myself causing things to exist and supporting them all, but dwelling not in them. Understand that all things are in me, even as the mighty air which passes everywhere is in space. O son of Kunti, at the end of a kalpa, all things return unto my nature. And then again, at the beginning of another kalpa, I cause them to evolve again. Taking control of my own nature, I emanate again and again. This whole assemblage of beings without their will, by the power of the material existence. These acts do not bind me, O conqueror of wealth, because I am as one who sitteth indifferent, uninterested in those works. By reason of my supervision, nature produceth the animate and inanimate universe. It is through this cause, O son of Kunti, that the universe revolveth. And a few pages later in chapter 10 starts with Krishna saying, Hear again, O thou my mighty arms, my supreme worlds, which unto thee who art well pleased, I will declare, because I am anxious for thy welfare. Neither the assemblage of the gods nor the adept kings know my origin, because I am the origin of all the gods and of the adepts. Whosoever knoweth me to be the mighty ruler of the universe, and without birth or beginning, he among men, undiluted, shall be liberated from all his sins. Subtle perception, spiritual knowledge, right judgment, patience, truth, self-mastery, pleasure and pain, prosperity and adversity, birth and death, danger and security, fear and equanimity, satisfaction, restraint of body and mind, almsgiving, inoffensiveness, zeal and glory, and ignominy, All these, the various dispositions of creatures, come from me. So in former days, the 7 great sages and the 4 Manus, who are of my nature, were born of my mind, and from them sprang the world. He who knoweth perfectly this permanence and mystic faculty of mine becometh without doubt possessed of unshakable faith. I am the origin of all. All things proceed from me. Believing me to be thus, the wise, gifted with spiritual wisdom, worship me. Their very hearts and minds are in me, enlightening one another and constantly speaking of me. They are full of enjoyment and satisfaction. To them thus always devoted to me, who worship me with love, I give that mental devotion by which they come to me. For them do I, out of my compassion, standing within their hearts, destroy the darkness which springs from ignorance by the brilliant lamp of spiritual discernment. We operate on the basis of the Declaration of the United Lodge of Theosophists, and I'll read it briefly and then we'll get into the next program. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but it does not concern itself with distinctions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification and practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. So now for the day's talk, a sevenfold universe. Why?
Good morning, welcome friends to the United Lodge of Theosophists in Bethesda, Maryland. Today's topic is the sevenfold nature of the universe and why. A sevenfold universe. Why? The teachings of Theosophy indicate with certainty that it is a sevenfold universe. The theosophical modulus of education, which is ultimately self-education, requires that no statements whatever in the textbook shall be accepted blindly or upon belief, but only when after due consideration they have approved themselves to the reason of the student. Observation and experience, together with correspondence and analogy, are the methods upon which due consideration is to be worked out. Why then a sevenfold universe? We know that there are the man is sevenfold. Buddhi, or spiritual soul; manas, human soul or mind; kama rupa, the animal passions; Linga Shariya, the astral body or the phantom body, and Prana or Jiva, life, and Rupa, the physical body, the body that we use as a vehicle in this manifestation. That this is a universe of thought, and that thought is verily its constructor, is a fundamental concept every clear mind must and can reconcile with already known facts. The thought or idea of the thing underlies and precedes everything that man makes. Its making is merely the expansion and working out in material substance of the immaterial thought. The pattern, so to say, represents the privative limits of the thought, just as an architect's plans for a building are the privative limits of the projected building. Language is the house of being. Fill them in with matter, and the objectivized thought appears as a physical creation. Arrange the materials according to the architect's drawings, and the carefully designed building appears. Since this creative power of thought is demonstrably true and unvarying in man's works, it must be correspondentially true of every object in nature, which also includes man's nature. All nature is sentient, for nature is but a composite term for various classes of intelligences, expressing themselves as mineral, vegetable, animal, human, and their combinations. Natural forms and nature's active and reactive modes under stimulus represent the thought of the kingdoms, or that in them which corresponds to thought in man. It is, in fact, man's thought that is responsible directly or indirectly for the phenomena of nature, since the impact, through embodiment and otherwise, of the higher intelligence upon the lower is the impelling force. Man is nature no less. His embodiment, physical and metaphysical, includes lives of every class and condition that make up great nature. That this must be true can be easily reasoned out. If we can see a thing, or touch, taste, hear, or smell that thing, such contact through the senses implies the astounding fact that we must have in ourselves the same elements that are in that thing, otherwise we could not contact it. It is by the similitude found in oneself that the awareness of anything whatever is possible, whether it be an object, a thought, a feeling, a planet rolling in space, whatnot. We are one with it to some extent, otherwise we could not react to it. The very existence of the human quality called sympathy is a bit of evidence which, if pushed logically to its limit, is proof positive of the fact of man's universal similitude. Granted that this is universe of thought, the necessity of its sevenfold radiation becomes apparent. We can appreciate the significance of the teaching. All our thoughts come to us at their source in terms of sound and color. For if true, this statement proves our proposition. Sound manifests in ratios of 7. The notes of the scale show it. So also does color manifest in ratios of 7. The solar spectrum evidences the fact. Almost numberless examples of sevening throughout nature are subsidiary corroborations. Why does thought come to us at its source in sound and color? Because these represent rates of vibration in the medium we call matter. They are set in motion primarily by the will of man, and are given direction by his desire. The joint action of the mass of beings which makes up the universe as a whole, for it is apparent that all is in motion, must supply the basic energic vibration, producing what might be called the mass chord. The particularly energized rate or tone of every world kingdom, class, or individual must have its proportion to that whole, thus causing its special differentiation from and in the whole. What is this force that causes the vibration in matter? Everybody knows that it is, but nobody knows what it is. It may be called life, light, deity, karma, consciousness. The name does not matter, so long as that name does not set limits to the infinite potency which it is. This is the source from which our thoughts, as all else, spring. This light, refracted through the prismatic triad of the spirit, intelligence, mind, which man is, radiates into the solar spectrum, which is embodiment, physical and metaphysical, represents. Man is sevenfold. The beings below him in the scale of development are potentially sevenfold. The beings above him in the great ladder of evolution are consciously sevenfold. The joint universe is a sevenfold expression of unitary intelligence, the great being. The Ocean of Theosophy by William Quan Judge. General Principles. A view of the general laws governing the cosmos, the sevenfold division in the system. Real matter not visible and that is always known to the Lodge. Mind, the intelligent portion of the cosmos. In the universal mind, the sevenfold plan of the cosmos is contained. Evolution proceeds upon the plan in the universal mind. Periods of evolution come to an end. This is the night of Brahma. The Mosaic account of cosmogenesis has dwarfed modern conceptions. The Jews had merely one part of the doctrine taken from the ancient Egyptians. The doctrine accords with the inner meaning of Genesis, the general length of periods of evolution. The same doctrine as Herbert Spencer's. The old Hindu chronology gives the details. The story of Solomon's temple is that of the evolution of man. The doctrine far older than the Christian one. The real age of the world. Man is over 18 million years old. Evolution is accomplished solely by the egos within that at last become the users of human forms. Each of the seven principles of man is derived from one of the seven great divisions of the universe. The sevenfold division, why not change the designation? Mr. Sinnett's book, Esoteric Buddhism, has done a great deal towards bringing before the West the Eastern philosophy regarding man and his constitution, but it has also served to perpetuate the use of a word that is misleading and incorrect. In that work on page 61, he states 7 distinct principles are recognized by esoteric science as entering into the constitution of man, and then gives his scheme of division thus: the body, vitality, astral body, animal soul, human soul, spiritual soul, and the seventh spirit or Atma. Now, if spirit be, as the whole philosophy declares, in all and through all, it is erroneous to call it one of the series. This very early led to the accusation that we believed in 7 distinct spirits in man. It always leads to misconception and directly tends to preventing our understanding fully that the Atma includes and is substratum of all the others. In India, it caused a protracted and at times heated discussion between the adherents of the rigid sevenfold classification of esoteric Buddhism and several learned and unlearned Hindus who support a fourfold or fivefold division. During that debate, the chief Hindu controverter, while holding to a different system, admitted the existence of a real esoteric sevenfold classification, which of course cannot be given to the public, Mr. Sinnett also evidently made a mistake when he said that the first mentioned division is the esoteric one. All right. Now, it would seem that these misconceptions and differences could be prevented if a word were adopted and invariably used that would clearly express the idea intended to be conveyed. As the prime declaration of Theosophy is that all these so-called bodies and appearances, for the purpose of enabling the One, the Atma, to fully comprehend nature and bring about the aim of the soul, why not denominate all that it uses for that purpose as vehicles? This name is strictly in accord with all parts of the philosophy. It is in effect the same as upadhi, or basis, foundation, carrier. By its use, we make no error when we say that Theosophy declares there is Atma, which works with and through 6 vehicles. Strictly, the body is a vehicle for the astral body. It, for that next, and so on, up to Atma, which is therefore seen to be all in all, as is clearly declared in the Bhagavad Gita. There are 7 rays on the Statue of Liberty. Our days are divided into 7 days. This change, or to some other than principle, should be adopted by all Theosophists, for every day there is more inquiry by new minds, and Theosophists themselves indeed need to use their words with care when dealing with such subjects. I thank you for your patience and time. Are there any questions? Yes, please.
I see we have 6 things listed there, but then we have talk about sevenfold. And it's my understanding the Atma is the 7th one. Why isn't that listed up there?
It's because it's not a personal principle. He did mention it, the speaker mentioned it,
Okay.
that Atma is a universal principle, that every human soul participates in it, but it's not personal to one human being. It's just there for everything,
So
not just the human
so
kingdom,
the
but
listing
all of
as
the
it
kingdoms.
is correct, but the Atma being the
Universal
universal
principle.
oversoul. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
The Oversoul.
Okay.
Okay.
It seems so straightforward. All of the sevenfold, you know, you had done the sevenfold nature of man in previous weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and also the reading also was associated with this too. It is this is a complete philosophy if it's got everything in it. Why is it such a hard thing to do, especially in the West, to get more focus on this philosophy?
Our deep materialism.
Also, if the principles are not known, how would you come up with it? In what system is it being taught? When did you meet these terms? When you came to Theosophy. Outside of theosophical circles, this is not taught. So if you are not by karma brought to this philosophy, you wouldn't know it. And as the standard teachings do not apply to it because it is not inclusive of it. Many people are not aware that such a division exists. Even though when you look around, you know, even from the Christian system of a spirit, soul, body, you know that you're not just the body, that there are other principles, but they're not external to you, they're on the inside. And so even the early church fathers, Origen, used to teach the pre-existence of the soul, but he was expelled from Alexandria because of his system he was of the system he was teaching, which is similar to this one. So if our society and our humanity do not accept the unity of all souls having existence in an oversoul and being interconnected, our welfare is really dependent on one another. We cannot exist in isolation because everything in the universe is interconnected, but human beings are also interconnected to one another. So humanity's welfare is dependent on how we treat one another, but also all those lower kingdoms that look up to us, how do we treat them? Because in future manvantaras, according to the philosophy, they are going to become human souls. They will evolve to that degree that they will enter the human kingdom. So it is important to understand it, but it is also important to apply it to ourselves and to daily life. That unity that we talk about continuously comes from here. If we understand that we are united, then how we treat others becomes imperatively important, and its significance becomes clear.
So that goes beyond just animal life and human life. That includes how we treat Earth, how we treat the universe. So
Yeah, the elemental lives.
yeah.
The elemental lives are very significant because elementals make our universe. There are different classes of them. 3 are mentioned, but we as human beings are not really aware of elementals composing our bodies. All our principles are made up of elementals. So how do we treat them? When we pick up a book, are you reverential in picking it up, or do you throw it down without any consideration as to the elemental lives that compose it? This is very important. How are we in family life? Teaching our children is very important because our education system lacks in this department. And HPB has a section in the key where she addresses education and how very important it is to actually cultivate these ideas as seed ideas in our children and teach them how to think independently. The 21st century, more than any other, is dependent on independent thinking. Oh, perhaps we should put it here next to manas. Independent thinking. Because in the 21st century, each human soul is its own authority. They have to independently come to a conclusion as to the validity of the philosophy and whether it sits right within themselves. Because even though there are these universal principles, I think they were mentioned, Brahma, Fohat, mind, Kama exists as well in human as well as out there. There's an astral field, there is Jivatma, there is the physical crust of the universe, a body. So all those principles are equivalent to the universal ones. In fact, we're a miniature copy of the universe, so all of the universal principles find their expression in us. Yes?
Could it be said that the divine individual is a bedrock foundational concept of the American system because it has occult foundations? But how do we explain this mass mind controlled discourse that we have?
Suggestion. I think either it is. Did you take a picture of this? I think it is Mr. Judge who has an article on suggestion.
The power of suggestion.
Suggestion, meaning that our advertising world uses that suggestive attitude to implant these things into the public mind because of the change in communication systems, TV, radio. Also, people are using their own private phones and being able to access information whenever they need it.
Right.
So it is a universal concept. Of course, they knew what would be coming. And the reason why it was brought out was that they wanted to make sure that because humanity was dividing into two groups. One group not accepting any religion and going towards skepticism, and the other group, materialistic science, considering only rupa aspect of human life and ignoring all the rest. If you don't touch it, it doesn't exist ideology, for instance.
Right.
So in order to bring the individual, divine individual, which is then the component here, it's this entity here, the monad. Buddhimanas, when it is yoked together, it becomes a permanent ability, giving the person certain powers, which is a gift of the gods, because they come from the gods. We call them Dayan Shohans, but you can also call them gods. There's not one god, but there are gods, because we are seven principle, there are seven Dayan Shohanic hierarchies, and it is very clearly explained in the secret doctrine that their individuality belongs to their hierarchy. They have no personality concept, and they do not understand animal-human passions or desires because they don't have it. So we, as a human family, are all working to reach this state. In other words, bring ourselves to such clear thinking through meditation and purification process as we go along, maybe not in one life, but several consecutive lives, that we actually become initiated into the mysteries. This is the goal of humanity, that we all be initiated into the truth. Until such time, we're really dealing with relative truth, not absolute. We mentioned that this physical body, but all this up to here is invisible, isn't it? This
Right.
part, this whole thing here is invisible. And only this body is visible. But to the inner eye, when it is developed, all these other, your astral body becomes clearly visible. You can then look behind, you go behind the mind and then look at your mind as to how it is functioning. This is why Patanjali's yoga aphorisms then become
Yes.
very important to understand and apply day to day. And no one can go without learning how to concentrate to meditation, because
Right.
that is the highest trance state that we can achieve on earth. So we have to start in learning how to concentrate, because our nation is based on distraction. All this
Distraction.
media attention is distraction.
Right.
Yes, please.
In Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms by William Quan Judge, translated for the Master's Lodge, the first exposition is assuredly concentration. But it is, I mean, we have to choose what we concentrate on rather than it's a, I don't know, he talks about mortification and like mumbling as well as when you fast, like that can you can reach concentration is the first step.
Correct. It's concentration, contemplation, and then it ends up in meditation, because meditation is the soul nature, absolute soul nature. But in the meantime, we have these lower four quaternary that we are trying to learn to control, and for that concentration is necessary. In his explanations on concentration, Mr. Judge says that by sitting for meditation, we're trying to cultivate the elementals not to be obstructive. In other words, distraction, because they flip-flop all over the place. As soon as you want to concentrate your mind, you're not able to do it. It goes its own way, because it's used to doing that. That's its normal activity. It goes from one thing to another, one subject to another subject, one object to another object. And that is what you're trying to control. In choosing what to concentrate on, there is a personal choice, because what means something to me, to my heart internally, might not be able to control yours. So they say, whether it is the Quran, whether it is the Bible, whether it is the voice of the silence, or a poem, whatever can cultivate that quietude in you is what you have to lean on. That is why they don't give any recommendations in that direction, because it's personal to each human soul. You have to find what means something internally to you, and are you able to concentrate on what you have chosen? It can be objective or subjective. So that's why it's left to you to choose what you want. In the Buddhist countries, they choose Buddha's miniature replica.
Right.
Because it means something to them, and by concentrating on that, they learn how to do that concentration perfectly well in time. Not that we are promoting that idols should come into it, because it can be objective or subjective, and the suggestion is that that image that you bring into your mind, that's what you have to hold on to, and not allow the lower mind to flip-flop from one place to another, which it does, because that's what it is used to doing. By doing that, this monastic principle, you know that it's junctured higher and lower, which is the intellectual. This is the interference here. But by constantly trying to control it, you're inviting the higher mind to come and help. And without this, we will never achieve it. Because the higher mind does not belong to this field operation. It has its own field of activity. The monastic field is an activity field, chitta, but if you don't invite it to come and help control this lower, it will never do it. It does not belong here, and that is why it is important to sit for it. Yeah. So that individual, divine individual is right here. That's your individuality, that part of you that goes, the monadic, that goes from life to life to life. That's what that is. And most people are not even aware of such an monadic entity existing, because the West does not even accept karma and reincarnation or continuity of consciousness from one life to other. As far as death is concerned, it's just the body that drops. All these principles drop too in their sequential order, but the monadic entity goes into the rest period, which is called the Davakanic period,
Right,
or that's where the heaven-hell ideology comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But if we truly understood our nature, death would not hold any fear for us, because it's just a change of consciousness. Just like when we go to sleep at night, we don't really know what's going on, do we? We are all unaware of what's going on, because the life of Buddhi monastic higher individuality belongs to the spiritual plane. So the personality is right here on earth asleep. All of our functions, lower functions, are dormant. So this entity, the individuality, that divine entity, has freedom to converse with the gods, with the celestial powers. And that is who truly we are. Not these. These are necessary for our existence on earth, but this is who we really are. So if we understand who we really are, I think we would treat one another better. We would show respect better. We would show kindness, generosity, charity to one another better. Because our interrelatedness would become very obvious, and that we cannot go much further than all those around us, that we need this to be a self-evident activity in each human soul, so that we all work in unison, that the object of the Theosophical movement, as well as the first fundamental, is based on that unity. Universal brotherhood is a fact. It is not just words, because we come from that one essence. We're all the same internally. Our physical body, according to karmic influences that we bring with us, is different, because each human soul expresses in a particular life what they're bringing with them from the previous ones, and it can go 3 lives backwards. So we're all different externally, but that is not who we are. This is our temple that has this inner monadic essence. And as soon as that monadic essence controls the lower parts, then we have become a suitable vehicle for the light, logoic light, to shine through. So all our activity then becomes beneficent and universal, because without that ideology, that unity does not occur between Buddhi and Manas. Yes.
You said, we both, the two of you said a lot in this time period. Now, if I'm looking at that sevenfold nature that's listed up there, and the top 3 you said basically go on, that's who our individuality is, and then I'm a Buddhi Manas. That goes from life to life, forever in the past, forever in the future.
Correct.
But these lower 4 is what we see on a day-to-day basis in this world, in this material existence. Now, and you said we drop this off, and how does that, and you also mentioned that we are initiated into the mysteries. I suppose we have to be initiated into the mysteries
at this
to
stage.
develop that, at this stage.
At this stage of our development, even though the writings brought a lot out, HPV clearly states that it is just lifting the corner of the first page. And she says, in the Secret Doctrine itself, it really reveals very little. In other words, it hides a lot more than it reveals. It's only a tiny piece that they gave out just to get us to think in the right direction. So, what exactly was your question?
I think you were.
The four
you were
lower. Okay.
You said a lot, and I'm kind of trying to put.
Okay. We said that the lower ones are not visible either. The only visible part is the rupa, which is your physical body. Jivatma, the life principle, is everywhere. It comes in, goes out. Our astral body is inside, and it extends outside because people who are psychic can actually recognize it, see it. Our passions and desires is the motor power in each one of us, because without any desire we wouldn't do anything. It's just that we need to control what it is and in what direction we want to move it. We need to become universal. We need to become altruistic, in other words. If we are going to prepare ourselves for service for humanity, this is the only path that is available to those students who wish to do it. This is a choice that everyone has to make for themselves. The lower drops. The physical body first drops. But Mr. Judge also says that if you could see the astral, you would notice that its electrical activity slows down. In other words, the astral is not going to be able to support the physical body anymore. So you would know that death would be coming very soon. It's just that we don't see anything internally. That's why we don't know how that is. But remember, when the soul is entering into life period on earth, it knows how long it's going to stay. It is aware of it. It's just that when we enter a physical body, we forget everything, and that is why we don't know. But if you know how to calculate it, you would know. So, Jiva is not a personal principle either. It's everywhere. So, you participate in it. Your astral body is composed of electromagnetic particles, elementals. So, at the end of life, the body separates, the astral body and the physical body separate. The electromagnetic body then separates into its molecular constitution, does it not? It can hold it, it's not cohesive anymore. So it scatters, it goes back to where it came from. Same thing with the astral, it's electromagnetic, dissipates. Your passions and desires, or things that you did not achieve, become skandaic. In your next life, you're going to attract the same elementals to yourself because they carry your imprint on them. In the meantime, other people use them too, but some of it will come back to you, and then you'll have to deal with what it is that you did not achieve. Hopefully, you won't have many personal desires, that you have been able to kind of convert them into universal ideology and universal desires in the service of humanity. This is not an easy path to follow, but they do recommend that we pay attention to the paramitas, that the first paramita is essential for the opening of the rest, and the first one is love and charity, without which every writing says we're not going anywhere. If you cannot love your neighbor, if you cannot do charity to your neighbor, you're not going anywhere. HPB actually says in the key, or in one of her writings, if it's not in the key, that some human beings have entered into this kingdom too early because they do not show any inclination of being human. In other words, they show their animalistic nature rather than the humane nature. And there are a lot of those selfish personalities around too, including in the Theosophical movement. A lot of people did not come to serve humanity, but they came to serve themselves, especially those who were looking for a following. And that is a no-no. In this philosophy, personality does not count. It's the individuality that is important. And those who think that the personality should be in the ascendancy do not really belong into these groups. they cause tremendous problems for the ones who are the true students of the philosophy. We've seen it a lot. It's just natural because a lot of people are attracted to it. It does not necessarily mean that they're following the inner path. Yeah.
Well, there's a letter I was reading, something I was reading, examples of people who are highly intellectual and have brilliant minds.
Yes.
But you can't. Are you saying you can't necessarily relate that to spirituality?
Well,
I mean, what's the
intellectual minds, those charismatic individuals who have intellectual minds that are giants, HPB tells you in her article that that is at the expense of spirituality, that those giants do not just develop overnight. They have been working at it for quite a few lifetimes probably, and in one life they come with this gigantic intellect. Oh, I can't write. This is an A.
G-I-G?
G-I-A, giants.
Okay.
And so they have gigantic intellect. And they fool a lot of people because they are brilliant. They have very attractive personalities, but she warns us that we need to look at what it is that they're doing. They're trying to draw the attention on themselves and take it away from the originals. And that's what the giveaway is, the original writings. It was R.C. that came in the 1909, I think he put it back on its original footing, because the other organizations had all veered away from the path that was set. And so we owe R.C. tremendous gratitude. If it wasn't for him, the 20th century and the 21st century students would not have had the original writings to fall back on. It is stated that to change one word of those writings is a crime against humanity, because it loses its validity. It's sequential, it loses its validity. HPB arranged the secret doctrine in a particular manner, and once that you understand the inner value of what is being said in that book, it becomes evident why it was done that way. But until such time, you have to have faith in the masters, in their representative, and in their teachings. It cannot be mixed with other things.
It's also said that it's more difficult for an intellect to learn this philosophy than it is for an everyday person. I guess they've already been channeled by then.
Correct.
I can go to PhD in this country and never have heard of the connect between the universe and all what you talked about today, me as an individual.
Because our scientific intellects think that they know. And in this philosophy, she tells you right at the beginning, if you're obtuse, you won't get anywhere. If you mix it, you will not get anywhere. You have to relearn. In other words, forget what you had learned before. If you want to follow the secret doctrine, you have to follow what it says. You cannot take some of its statements and apply it to yourself and then give it to the world as you understand it. You have to stay with the original writings. To the best of your ability, you give the originals out, not what you think. And if you are expressing an opinion, then you say that it's your opinion, not otherwise.
So you're best off to learn what's in those books before you start applying, doing other stuff.
Well, a lot of people might not be intellectual, but they perceive it on the inner lines of their being, like Jack Obama. There were unlettered human beings at that time. I think he was in Germany. He was a cobbler, or I forgot what he was, but unlettered totally, and he understood it. He understood it. There are those whose hearts are attuned to the universal heart, and it beats, it pulsates with it, and they're much better off than these giants who are totally intellectual and have lost their spirituality. Yeah. Okay.
Well, to go quick, well, I just had another thought. Muslim religion is the person that started that could not read and write, could he?
Correct. He had a scriber that took notes. But the point is, none of those who come to bring the philosophy to the world claim anything for themselves. It's the followers afterwards that do.
The followers,
and they are the ones that cause the problems, because in time, the knowledge that was brought out becomes eroded, it becomes mixed, it becomes according to where people are and what they insert into it. And if you do not know the philosophy, you would not be able to tell what has been inserted, what was the original, what has been inserted. And even the Upanishads have suffered such a calamity, because the Brahmins did not want their philosophy to be given to the general public, so they took some parts of it out. They didn't insert the stuff in it, but they took the knowledge out of it, so that without a key, you can't understand what it is saying to you today. And there's an explanation of it in the Secret Doctrine.
One more quick comment or question. There's a document over there that talks about 40,000 changes in the Secret Doctrine. What's behind you there? Is that with the changes?
We in the United Lodge of Theosophical Circles stay with the original writings. The printing was done, as said before, in 1909, and facsimile exact copies of the originals still exist, and ULT does not use any other. If we are aware of it, then it becomes our responsibility to let other people know that too. Thank you for coming. Next week's talk is the Phoenix and the Serpent.